Shalom. Shalom, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to Watchman's Voice, Remnant and Martyrs to Yashar'al, Nation of Believers. Watchman's Voice, Remnant and Martyrs to Yashar'al, Nation of Believers. My name is Symmanayah, and today is October 31st, 2013. If you're tuning in for the first time to any recordings or presentations, you will come to know that Yashar'al, Nation of Believers, of whom I reference, consists of only all those who seek to worship and obey Almighty Yahuwah, all nations, kindreds, and tongues, who seek to worship and obey the Almighty Creator, and who have come to accept Yahusha as Mashiach, as our Messiah. It is you who I consider my brothers, my sisters, my family. This new series that I started, this is the 6th installment. It is entitled Watchman's Voice, Remnant and Martyrs, for it is directed to those who would be the remnant of Yashar'al and the martyrs of Yashar'al in these end times, these last days. I have presented 5 segments already, and this is the 6th installment, and this installment is entitled, What is Visible Now? What is Visible Now? Segment 1 consisted of the identity of Yashar'al, the true identity of Yashar'al. Segment 2 consisted of discovering the Spirit of Yahusha. Discovering the Spirit of Yahusha. And I went on to segment 3, living instructions and guidance. Living instructions and guidance. Segment 4 consisted of what's to come. What's to come. Segment 5, when rivers bleed and fire fall. And now the 6th installment, what is visible now? Again, I want to welcome you. Let us begin. My brothers and sisters, we have something that they did not have during the days of Noah and Lot. We have the ability to receive information in many diverse ways, abundantly and quickly, if we direct our attentions to specific elements and things that are made before us. Resources. We also have, as they did in the days of old, the quickening power of the Almighty Father Yahuwah, Yahuwah's Spirit. I will attempt to present critical trends that are gradually enlarging and will lead up to the return of our Mashiach, our Messiah, Yahusha, that will lead to his return. I have stated on many occasions that end times, these last days, have arrived. My attempt in this segment is to introduce things that are occurring now. What is visible now? In an effort to bring some light to the things that are real versus types and shadows and false flags. I have stated many things regarding preparation and the need to discern and understand what must be done. I will continue to encourage each and every one of us to seek earnestly to worship and obey the living Almighty One Yahuwah. Consider accepting Yahusha as Mashiach, for in receiving him and acknowledging his set-apart spirit, one can come to discern and understand what must be done. Let us take a look at what's happening across the globe. Let us measure these matters against scriptures. While doing so, ask yourself, will man determine the destiny of our future existence? Will man be the one that determines our time of extinction? Will world leaders direct our path as cataclysmic events unfold, or can these conditions be found in end-time prophecy as mentioned in scriptures? My brothers and sisters, let us begin to explore some critical things that are real and unfolding. I invite you to use your search engines and witness writings, pictures, in some cases videos proving what is unfolding. Keep top of mind the most critical things we need to survive as man is to follow and seek after worship and obedience to the Most High Father. From a natural perspective or practical perspective, we must have fresh water, fresh air, and food. As I go through talking about the things that are occurring, that are visible now, seek to discern the difference between types and shadows, false flag events, and true prophecy. Consider strongly, given this segment, what is visible now, your full attention. As always, pray without ceasing. As we move into this segment, let's take a look at our planet from sea to sea. I want to start with something that is very critical that is occurring. Psalm has dubbed this as the process of the big one unfolding before our eyes. The big one that will cause the total demise of man. Japan. Currently a country whose northern borders are plagued with trying to control the world's most disastrous nuclear event ever before witnessed. Hundreds of tons of radioactive waste have been spewing into the Pacific Ocean since March 2011. And as I stated, today is October 31st, 2013. So for over 2.5 years now, the Pacific Ocean has been receiving enormous doses of radioactive particles bombarding the sea, the Pacific Ocean. This was the result of a massive earthquake and tsunami. In addition to radioactive waste being spilled into the Pacific Ocean, there are large amounts of debris from the tsunami cast into the sea, some of which is floating and have polluted much of the Pacific Ocean. Some have become lodged at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, contaminating our seas. Many people fail to realize that radiation rises into the clouds and becomes transported in the rains. Yes, we can have radiation in our rain. Also, many are unaware that one of the major flows of the Pacific Oceans, the current, heads directly from the eastern side of Japan and flows across the Pacific Ocean. Remember, the world is round, and the flow flows directly to the west coast of North America, and the west coast of South circulates to the south towards South America. In other words, my brothers and sisters, radioactive water contaminants have begun to show up in small amounts and gradually increasing along the west coast of the United States and Canada. What say you, my brothers and sisters? Japan, a broken down nuclear reactor or several. Recently, my brothers and sisters, an article went viral over the internet regarding a fisherman who witnessed what he described as nearly 1/3 of 23,000 miles or 37,000 kilometers that he traveled from Australia to Japan, around to the United States and back to Australia. This was all done on the Pacific Ocean. And he said during his journey, approximately 7,000 miles of that trip, the ocean was dead. Yes, you heard it, dead. No living creatures in sight. It is only a matter of time before we witness radiated sea levels rise in such a way that the radiation will affect the sea life and our food supply chain. Already it is alleged that the FDA refuses to test the seafood for levels of radiation. In some cases, the tolerable level of radiation have been raised in order to excuse its infusion into our food chain. Greed is the motive. Beyond wickedness to cover up what's emerging as a global event, greed is propelling the manipulation of information such that most people are unaware what is occurring. Please note also that Japan is a huge island, and much of it is gradually becoming less attractive for man's survival. People must migrate somewhere. The affluent, many have probably already fled the country. Japan also sits on what is known as the Ring of Fire, an area that is believed to be one of the most volatile on the planet, that is prone to earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic activities. China. China, there is no doubt this country has the largest population on the planet with approximately well over 1.3 billion people. China has amassed a strong currency and has provided loans across the globe, making many nations indebted to their regime. As a result, China's greed, many of their communities have seen an uptick, or better yet, a rampant contamination in their atmosphere due to pollution and unregulated manufacturing. Their waterways and streams are becoming polluted. This puts a strain on limited fresh water for its growing population. Yes, its rivers and streams are being polluted. In some parts of China, the atmosphere, due to severe and global weather patterns, cause severe atmospheric pollution. Pollution in the atmosphere is such that they were wearing masks. In some cases, business was shut down and schools were shut down. This is in China. The air had become so hazardous, people were warned to stay inside. Does this seem like somewhere that's attractive to live? It has been so bad, and in some cases have even led to death. To add more misery to a faltering nation, they are faced with declining food production, forcing them to import, which means bring it into the country from other parts of the world. Now remember, China has well over 1.3 billion people. So if they're using their wealth and money and power to buy up food from around the world, can you imagine what's happening to inventories in the countries of which they are purchasing these supplies? Where are they getting them? India, the second largest country on the planet with 1.2 billion people, has come to a point where it was said that they only produce enough food for only approximately 62% of their population. In other words, you could say 62 out of every 100 people, enough food was produced. There was only enough food to feed 62 out of 100. At least enough food produced. So what are they doing? As well, they look to other countries around the world to import food. India, the second largest nation on the planet with 1.2 billion. Where is all this food originating to satisfy their needs? Who has seen the poverty, the starvation, the lack of fresh water conditions in India? It would not take you long nor hard, nor create a hard time to discover the facts in these words. Also, it's no secret that in some parts of India, freshwater wells are being overpumped and making it difficult for people to access fresh water in some communities. Remember, brothers and sisters, we must have fresh water, fresh air, and food in order for man to survive from a natural or practical perspective. I am indeed aware that man lives by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Almighty Father. Let us be mindful of what is occurring, my brothers and sisters. The Middle East. Here, it is no secret. It has been for ages a bastion, a mainstay of upheaval. Since the dawn of the ages, the enemy has long contributed to the wickedness plaguing this region. What many fail to realize is that Khazars, Ashkenaz, Jews who are one and the same, Jews, Khazars, Ashkenazim, they are one and the same, and they are not indigenous of this area. Israel as we know it is not true Yashar'al. They are imposters. These imposters have long since made every attempt to fool the world into thinking they are the children of the book. True Hebrews, Abari, Ibri, will emerge in these last days and these end times, and the world will come to know who they are. Be mindful, my brothers and sisters. Much of the conflict is also about imposters coming in, taking over a parcel of geography. Yes, we know that there are religious battles going on as well regarding the Middle East. But many will be surprised to discover, just as we eat, drink, and breathe fresh air, this is desires of the citizens of the Middle East as well. Yes, you can have turmoil, greed, fighting, and religious battles. But believe me, most of the uptick in fighting in the Middle East is over food and fresh water. And we could also add to that employment in some cases. But the main thing is food and water. It is said that the recent uprising in Syria began over fresh water, access to fresh water. We have been duped, food, to think it's all about global democracy. This is far from the truth. The Middle East, this will be the last front where the Mashiach, the Messiah, will face the enemy upon his return. Yes, Yahusha upon returning. In the region where it all began, it will roll up like a scroll and come to an end where it began. Africa, an entire continent with many countries, many nations, many tribes, many different governmental structures. A continent plundered because of greed. Plundered. Foreigners who have long since raided this continent. It has been manipulated and abused, and yet it is to this day filled with many rich resources. The wickedness and greed of man has created much instability throughout the continent. For those who are indigenous to the area, and foreigners have come in, promoting division in an effort to control the resources of this rich place. Many places in Africa have been underdeveloped in an effort to exploit the natives, as it is described. Throughout Africa are true Yashar'al, many of whom have been deceived into thinking the way of the Jews or Jewish people represent their culture. This is far from the truth. Many have been deceived and practice Judaism. They are not representative of true Yashar'al. People are being deceived to believe because they are black that they are true Israel or true Yashar'al. True Yashar'al, or Israel as it is commonly known, are people who seek to worship and obey the Almighty Father and follow His living instructions and understand His written scriptures as they are made alive. This is true Yashar'al. The original Hebrew people, just because our skin may have been black or is black, doesn't mean that all blacks are Hebrews or Abari or Ibri. And yes, I mentioned Hebrews, for Hebrews are the chosen, were the first chosen and the chosen of the Almighty Father. And it is the Gentiles or Goyim and other nations who are grafted into the body of believing, worshiping Hebrews through Yahusha, our Mashiach, our Messiah, and we are grafted into the body as one under the banner of Yashar'al. Pray and watch, my brothers and sisters. Back to Africa. Africa is no doubt filled with controversy from its people to the beliefs that date back since the cradle of civilization. Many false idols were birthed on this continent. If you examine the countries in Africa, you will not have to look far to determine it is perceived to be one of the poorest places on the planet, yet with rich resources. When it comes to distributing food, because of its poverty, man had continued to manipulate how much food reaches the people of this continent. Yes, my brothers and sisters, when it comes to distributing food, they are last on the list. Therefore, they will continue to face starvation exceedingly greater than what has ever been before. They are not considered a superpower per se, due to division among the various nations within the continent, as well as the greedy nations abroad that all pilfer, pillage, rob, and steal and manipulate from this rich resource continent. Yes, it's unstable there. There are some areas that are a little bit more stable than others. Europe. Here rests the pinnacle and instigator of many wars. It has a stronghold and lineage into the people of the leadership in the United States. Great Britain or the UK has long since staged battles and pushed theology to the world. It is in Europe where paganism flourished like a rampaging virus, although most people are unaware that paganism dates back years before the Europeans caught hold of its practices. Paganism originated in Africa, along with many other false beliefs and religious behaviors and practices. Actually originated in Africa. Europe. Massive greed has brought much of this continent to economic ruins. Financial debt beyond measure and getting worse with each passing day. Poverty is widespread while the media does every attempt to hide it and mask it from the average working person. The true conditions over in Europe, their economies are faltering and they are juggling and manipulating economies in order to stay afloat. Food inventories have been poisoned in Eastern Europe due to nuclear waste dumps and the Chernobyl nuclear fiasco that occurred many years ago. There are articles and videos that recommend not even eating any food in Eastern Europe. It's amazing how mass media hide the risks of life in this region. As pertaining to the UK and Great Britain, the monarchy and leadership of this nation have influenced much of the industrialized world through their wealth, yet within their borders poverty is running rampant. Food production has faltered. A recent article stated that if it were not for imported food, the UK would have run out of food on approximately August 14, 2013, leaving 4 months remaining in a year, and a country of this size would have run out of food if it weren't for imports, food being shipped in from other parts of the world. Again, where? Who's supplying that food? What about India? What about China? Somewhere there's some deep fields and deep inventory levels. I think not, and I'll mention that more later. Let's look at Australia. Australia, known as the place down under due to its proximity to other parts of the world. This place is facing unprecedented weather patterns. Unpredictable change and challenges are facing Australia due to global warming. Not to mention sea levels are rising. Antarctica is closer to Australia than probably any other nation, maybe New Zealand. Antarctica, and it has been melting due to global warming, sea levels rising, thus contributing to high volumes of salinity or salt water. In some cases, it's infiltrating fresh water tables. Australia also sits on the Ring of Fire. Much of the influence in the country is due to British rule or British influence. Yes, Australia sits on the Pacific Rim. Australia could also be an area where we see emerging radiation as the Pacific Ocean cycles its currents towards the south. South America, another continent that faces many challenges. Yes, many of us may know much of the drugs that infiltrate this continent is brought into the United States and circulated globally as well. So South America have and will continue to see its share of violence as it relates to drugs. But believe it or not, due to greed in the workings of the drug trade, which many nations play a part in, some with secret or clandestine operations, all for the sake of greed. We know what the fallout of drug use has done to our society and life. This continent, due to its geographic location, is also a major contributor of fresh produce, coffee, and other foods, as well as exotic animals and materials along with oil. South America, though, is facing some same problems with drought. Overpopulation is growing. The Amazon forest and river, one of the largest rivers on the planet, if not the largest, is drying up and being polluted. The west coast of South America borders the eastern portion of the Ring of Fire and is subject to earthquakes, volcanic activity, and tsunamis. Its west coast is also in the path of death that is spreading in the Pacific Ocean due to radioactive waste spewing from the Fukushima plant miles away. This poses tremendous threat to food supplies along their coast, and we are at risk of seeing contaminated seafood that are fed to other animals getting into our supply chain. We are also at risk of seeing the evaporation of these radioactive particles and witnessing rain, radiated rain. We will see as the radiation waste is stirred and continues to churn in the Pacific Ocean, we will see its rippling effect. And South America is also in the shadows of such. And the last place I want to talk about is the United States. Our government is facing tremendous challenges, both domestic and international. The most critical thing that most people are unaware is that although the federal government is facing monumental fiscal or financial challenges, many states and local municipalities are up against financial challenges as well. Do you know in some cases it is the government, whether federal, state, or local government, that is the largest employer? And so as these entities struggle with finances, they are beginning to merge and shrink, and in some cases go bankrupt, leaving people without a means to purchase food and water, let alone shelter. In an effort to save time, let me address the matters of major concern beyond these financial troubles. Yes, our unemployment is high, but I don't want to address this matter of unemployment in this presentation. The United States have witnessed a huge deterioration of many core major cities. Detroit is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many levels of government struggling, and it has and is leading to major disasters waiting to happen. Our infrastructure is facing a critical meltdown. Things such as utilities, water systems, wastewater treatment, trash management, roadways, rail systems, bridges have all aged, my brothers and sisters. The electric grid has all aged. It would not take much research to identify incidents where bridges have begun to collapse, some with fatalities and others with minor injuries. These systems, our infrastructure in the United States, is like a ticking time bomb, and things will cascade worse than what they are. The United States is a world exporter of many different food products. In other words, we ship a lot of food to other countries. Food such as soybeans, grain, wheat, corn make up just a sample of diverse things shipped out of the country. Not to mention merchandise that has been manufactured with the use of fresh water. I have mentioned how Africa, China, India, and the UK and other nations are facing severe food shortages. And if it were not for food imports, these nations and continent would not survive. So who has asked the question, if the people of these geographic areas are experiencing severe food shortages and have moved towards imports for their survival, where is the food coming from? Where are they getting their food? Remember the numbers. Between those that I have listed, we are talking about well over 3 billion people who are in need of food globally, abroad. Did you know that the number of farmers have dwindled dramatically over the last 5 years in the United States? I realize there will be those who will dismiss this and say, well, that's due to mergers and acquisition, or it happens. But be advised, my brothers and sisters, there's also a reduction in the amount of land being used to farm while populations steadily increase dramatically and at an alarming rate. In 2011, the United States faced severe flooding, which resulted in the destruction of many farmlands due to pollutants contaminating that land. Floods brought about oil, chemicals that contaminated much of the farmland in the farm belt. This caused a reduction in the amount of food that was planted and introduced into the food inventories the following year. Please take into consideration the food chain is a process that goes through many cycles, from the farm to the consumer. In these processes, many foods are stored up, and there are various warehousing techniques. Techniques in where the food is placed in warehouses with as much as, in some cases, 12 to 18 months in times past of food. The food supply chain is changing drastically. The amount of food inventories have been reduced, my brothers and sisters. This is real. While many may be deceived to think prices go up and down and it'll all pass, do not succumb to such rhetoric. The global population is outpacing the rate of which food is being produced. In 2012, over 65% of the United States faced very severe drought, resulting in closures for many cattle farmers, cattle ranchers, dairy producers, along with farmers who had to close shop, stop farming altogether, stop producing food due to lack of fresh water. Much of what occurred widespread across the United States. So many of us take for granted how food reach our tables, but this does not negate or remove the details of what occurred and what is emerging as I present this message to you, my brothers and sisters. Adding more misery, challenges, or pain, the year 2013, which is not even over yet, has produced and demonstrated continued drought, mostly west of the Mississippi River, wreaking havoc on more farmers and their ability to produce food as they did in times past. Yes, there were farmers closing up shop in 2013, cattle ranchers reducing the size of their herds, in some cases going out of business, and so many other farmers with different types of livestock forced to close. Yes, my brother, this is real. Nations overseas continue to increase their imports to meet their needs for their citizens. Believe it or not, nations and people with the deepest pockets related to wealth are influencing how food inventories are managed and who takes priority when it comes to food distribution. Let me present a scenario to you. Let's say you are distributing food to 100 grocery stores. You are distributing food to 100 grocery stores. You have in your possession 1,000 pallets of food to distribute to 100 stores. If this food was distributed evenly, each store would receive 10 pallets. Now, what if, as time passed, you only have 1,000 pallets instead of 1,000 pallets, you now have 500 pallets. In other words, it's been reduced because there wasn't enough food. They didn't harvest enough food for 1,000 pallets, so they only have 500 pallets. But yet, we still have the 100 grocery stores that want to put food on their shelves. If it was distributed evenly, now the stores that once received 10 pallets would only receive 5 pallets of food. And keep in mind, their customers buy according to their needs as much as they could possibly purchase, one way or another. Now let's look. As inventory levels start shrinking, we start seeing price increases. And then price wars begin. Behind the scenes, most consumers don't know, yes, it's a bidding war. For instance, let's say a can of corn goes up to a price of $1. And in the poor communities, the stores cannot sell that corn for $1. People say it's too high. So the $1 can of corn is shipped to the affluent community who are so hungry they'll pay $10 for a can of corn. Now you have the bidding wars, and you start seeing a silent war over food. I submit to you, my brothers and sisters, this has begun. Begin to look at the shelves of the grocery stores every time you go in them. Look at the shelves and see. Look at the dates of the food. There was recent media hype saying that all the dates don't mean anything. Now they're trying to say don't worry about the dates. Why? Because food inventories are shrinking, my brothers and sisters. This is not a false flag. These are realities. Educators in the media will seek to keep people calm and promote the nuances or the attributes of supply and demand. Some may even tell you this will pass. The example I provided is just a micro example of what has begun, what is visible now, my brothers and sisters, in the United States. Conditions are growing worse and will get even more challenging in the coming days. These theories circulating regarding the need to depopulate. It'll get worse in the coming days. Did you know that there are theories circulating regarding the need to depopulate the planet? While these are perceived to be conspiracy theories, if you weigh what is actually occurring in the United States as well as abroad, you will see that the evidence point to world leaders infusing chemicals and toxins and poisons and intolerance into the food chain, thus to reduce the mortality rate and cause individuals to die off. It is not a conspiracy theory. It is the fruit and the action of one's greed and wickedness. Chemicals are placed in our foods. Our foods are being manipulated with genetically modified processes, all proclaiming for the better. My brothers and sisters, on top of all that I have mentioned, do not forget the greatest catastrophe in man's existence currently is the enormous amount of radioactive waste spewing into the Pacific Ocean. The chain of events to follow regarding this cataclysmic event will send a frightening, rippling effect in the coming months. The devastation that is ensuing or growing is beyond anyone's imagination and will soon cause much turmoil. Also, there has been a rise in drilling for natural gas using a process commonly referred to as fracking. Fracking or fracturing is a process where they mix toxic chemicals with water and inject it into the ground to break up the shale in search of natural gas. This process has proven in some cases to infect our fresh rivers and waterways, making them undrinkable. Yes, there are purification systems that can remove germs and bacteria, but when you start talking about radioactive and some chemical toxins, there is no filtration system to remove them. Thus, the amount of available fresh water is diminishing, my brothers and sisters. Currently, there are moves to begin fracking activity in the state of Michigan that could pose a severe threat to the Great Lakes. This is dangerous and is ignored, all for greed. I've seen an article where concerns are popping up more and more about the fresh water in the Great Lakes, where an individual said, oh, there's so much water there, we'll never run out. How many of you are aware that they have been importing fresh water out of the Great Lakes as well. The Great Lakes water table is low. It is over 2 feet lower than what it was in times past. And it is gradually shrinking, along with the risk of fracking processes possibly causing disasters that will poison our water system. My brothers and sisters, yes, we are challenged across the world. Fresh air, more than anything, fresh water and food. And we need fresh air, but what I'm saying is we have not witnessed so much of the air contamination. Yes, on the West Coast, yes, in different parts of the United States, but since most manufacturing have went over to China, China carries that badge currently. China and Russia. Global warming is affecting the entire planet. So yes, we face air quality problems as well. These conditions are too real, my brothers and sisters. We have and will continue to approach peak thresholds regarding our survival. These conditions are not false flags that I have presented to you. Please be advised, there's a difference between types and shadows, false flags, and true prophecy fulfillment. End-time prophecies speak on famine, food shortages, drought, fresh water shortages, pestilence, and disease. It is time to pray and ask yourself what methods will be used to fulfill end-time scriptures regarding prophecy. Latter-day prophecy. Can the conditions of the planet mentioned in this presentation be contributing factors? Can they be contributing factors regarding end-time prophecy fulfillment? Look around, my brothers and sisters. You will discover a lot of people and even news broadcasters using terms and phrases like unprecedented, never before, first time this has ever occurred, never seen this before, and other like communications to describe alarming events that have come to be and that are on the rise on this planet. My brothers and sisters, I present all that I have come to see, learn, and understand within what has been compelled and pressed upon me to give. But remember, it will always be the Spirit of Yahusha that will make known with understanding what is right, what is righteous, not me. End times are here in the last days, as written, have begun, and soon much proof will emerge. There is a plan for the remnant and martyrs of Yashar'al. Many have been prepped and are unaware, but soon will come to understand why they are going through the specific things that they are facing. They will soon come to understand what must be done. It will be wise to come to know what is visible now for preparation's sake and timing of obedience. It will be wise to know what is expected now, what is visible now, for the signs of the times are unfolding before our eyes. Know this, my brothers and sisters, Yashar'al has not been appointed to wrath. Let me say that again. Yashar'al, nation of believers, have not been appointed to wrath. Consider 1 Thessalonians 5, 9 through 11. Because Elohim did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain deliverance through our Master Yahusha Messiah, who died for us so that we, whether awake or asleep, should live together with him. Therefore encourage one another and build up one another, as indeed you do. Some are taking the scripture to mean that none of Yashar'al will be in the midst of the chaos, the civil unrest, the calamity, the danger that is coming. This is not so, my brothers and sisters. You know and I know that there are those with hidden agendas. There are those who falter and make mistakes. There will be those that will fall away. There will be those led astray. You know and I know, my brothers and sisters, there will be martyrs. And I pray that you are aware that the rain comes down the just and the unjust. So do not try to grab these verses to think that that means everybody's going to be okay. This is not true and erroneous. Come away from anyone that promote such teachings. Yashar'al, true Yashar'al, there will be a remnant to fulfill the scriptures of which most of us are unaware as it pertains to the details that lie ahead. Do I know all the details? Indeed, I don't. Have I envisioned much of what's to come? I am persuaded to believe that the Spirit of Yahusha, by favor and mercy, have shown me much. There will be martyrs, as I mentioned. There will be the remnant. Martyrs will echo the last words that point to life in Yahusha before their prospective death or sleep. We can attempt to wrestle with, try to master what we think is over the horizon. But it is behavior such as that will make for good blinders and earplugs. Instead of trying to master anything, let us learn the voice of Yahusha, our Mashiach. Many want to be priests. They want to be leaders. They want to be priests. 1 Peter 2:9 says, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a set-apart nation, a people for a possession, that you should proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." Yes, many of us want to be priests or represent as a royal priesthood. But it appears that when the opportunity is given to be priests, we ignore it. Meaning, when the Spirit of Yahusha works in us, we as his servants, being used by him to present righteousness, are functioning as priests. What is a priest? One who makes intercessory prayers for the people. What is a priest? One who lifts up the atonement process for those who are unaware. What is a priest? One who distributes truth and righteousness and guidance to those who seek to worship the Almighty. What is a priest? One who contributes to the building up of the body, the preparation of the bride of Yahusha. So I ask you, my brothers and sisters, have we come to a point where we want to pick and choose what we're going to say, what we're going to do to represent ourselves as individuals of a royal priesthood? What about these words I'm presenting to you? Are these the words presented to you to give you an opportunity to participate in distributing that you are demonstrating that you are indeed from a royal priesthood? So you are endowed, empowered with these words that are made alive by the Spirit of Yahusha? Will you give in? Will you succumb? Will you be overtaken by unbelief and rebellion? Can the words of my mouth be from the Spirit of Yahusha? And are you being entrusted to lead others towards a righteous gathering? Are you a royal priesthood of Yahusha, but want to pick and choose what you will do or how you will lead? Do you honestly believe this is how things are going to be accomplished in the coming days? True priesthood brothers will be responsible and make intercessory prayer and spread words of life regarding how people should govern themselves and direct their actions as it relates to worship and obedience, regardless of how people feel. There are so many times where we fail to realize what is truly our best interest. All too often we rationalize within our brains versus listening to the voice of Yahusha. My brothers and sisters, if you are pressed for time and desire to be informed as to what things you should research over others, my response would be, first seek to earnestly worship and obey the Most High Father Yahuwah and establish a relationship with Yahusha as our Mashiach. My advice would be to come to know his voice and build a relationship with him. Then pray, study, pray some more, and watch. Establish a ready mind and body to respond, to adapt, to adjust as end-time prophecies unfold before us. Watch for things that will affect the air we breathe, fresh water and food supplies, as well as be mindful of drought conditions, pestilence, and disease that will be on the rise, for these represent what has been foretold in Scripture. I encourage each of us to keep in mind Genesis 47 chapter, specifically the 19th verse, for we see here where men were willingly giving themselves over to slavery for food. In recent years, Hollywood and other entertainment, including these pre-rapture and supposedly end-time prophecy scholars, have stepped up their rhetoric and theatrics regarding these last days. I realize there are those who have been overtaken those who buy into this type of entertainment, those who become intrigued by the videos and books regarding end-time prophecy. But soon, all curiosities will be put to rest. I am not remiss in thinking that you have not or will place me in the same boat as others who speak on these matters. As I have mentioned before, the complexity of this journey is very challenging and never before been in the condition that we see. Let us learn to yield into the willing plans of the Almighty Yahuwah and accept Yahusha as our Mashiach as we press forward. The training and development individuals are receiving right now is like no other. It is not by academics, it is not by self-appointed leaders, nor the self-appointed mores, teachers, or any other self-prescribed guide. The Spirit of Yahusha is fashioning his remnant, his bride, and those who would be martyrs, who are also part of his bride, who will echo the last warnings of instructions in the coming days. Yashar'al will be gathered to a safe place, and the Almighty Father will fulfill all that is written. Unbelief and rebellion is growing like a plague. People who consider themselves family, Yashar'al, are becoming overwhelmed, confused, and some disillusioned by the different interpretations of what's right and who to listen to, as well as how to be obedient to the Most High Father Yahuwah. Regardless of these conditions, there will be no excuses or obstacles that will not be removed. No excuses will exist that is acceptable. Obstacles will be removed. Obstacles, including those who try to discredit or impede the living words that are coming forth regarding end-time prophecy and what's unfolding in Scripture. Unbelief and rebellion will be more widespread among believers. For this reason, it is because judgment began first at the house of Elohim. Many of us will become betrayed by loved ones. Yes, we will become betrayed and face disappointment, shock, and anger, to say the least. What is visible now is the name in this segment. I pray that enough information or pointers, words that assist in your search for validation and proof regarding this message have been presented for your journey. Yashar'al will be gathered from the four corners of the earth. There will be a remnant and martyrs, each awaiting instructions and righteous guidance as it is given to them day by day. Be encouraged, brothers and sisters, my family. Remember, the plan belongs to the Almighty Father Yahuwah. I leave you with this last verse, 1 Corinthians 10:13, and it reads as follows. No trial has overtaken you except such as common to man, and Elohim is trustworthy, who should not allow you to be tried beyond what you are able, but with the trials shall also make the way of escape, enabling you to bear it. My brothers, this concludes this segment of Watchman's Voice, Remnant and Martyrs. A brief chronological order of the titles of this series consists of: the first segment was about identity, race, life. The second, discovering the Spirit of Yahusha. The third segment, living instruction and guidance. The fourth segment, what's to come. The fifth segment, when rivers bleed and fire fall. And now we end this segment number 6, what is visible now. Pray and watch, my brothers and sisters. These words will find their intended destination and perform as they are designed. My prayer for Yashar'al is that we begin to prepare to adapt and adjust to major changes that will come upon us in these coming days. Changes that will break our day-to-day routine and remove us from business as usual. I pray, O Yashar'al, my brothers and sisters, my family, that we are able to endure until the very end. Until next time, my brothers, my sisters, my family, look to him whose set apart spirit was sent by the Almighty Yahuwah in Yahusha's name. Look to our Mashiach Yahusha and discover what is necessary to fulfill all that is required. Choose wisely this day where and whom you will listen to. Choose wisely whom you will worship and obey. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, Until next time, let us press closer into the bosom of our Almighty Father Yahuwah. Shalom, shalom, shalom.